Infantino. He called him fantastic. He said Infantino had just presided over the most successful World Cup ever staged by a factor of 4, and that if he were gone, the tournament would never be as successful or as profitable again. It was the first time Trump had publicly defended Infantino since this whole crisis detonated. And the timing of it tells you almost everything you need to know. Let me back up, because if you've been living a normal life and not tracking the civil war inside football's boardroom, you deserve the full picture. It started with a plan. Back at the end of July, fresh off a home World Cup that shattered attendance and viewership records across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, Infantino unveiled a proposal to do something no FIFA president had ever dared. He wanted to take the commercial and ticketing rights to every FIFA competition, the World Cup included, and fold them into a brand new company. And then he wanted to sell off around 1/5 of that company to a private investment group, a deal that could have raised up to $4.2 billion. The investor lined up to anchor it was Thrive Capital, an American venture firm founded by Joshua Kushner. And Joshua Kushner, keep this in your back pocket, is the brother of Jared Kushner, who is Donald Trump's son-in-law. The football world did not take it well. It took it, in fact, about as badly as it is possible to take anything. Within days, Europe's governing body, UEFA, voted to boycott every FIFA competition, the World Cup included, if the plan went ahead. CONCACAF, which runs the game across North and Central America and the Caribbean, rejected it. Asia's confederation, the AFC, rejected it too. The opposition was so fast, so total, and so furious that Infantino did the only thing he could. He killed his own plan, scrapped it, apologized to all 211 member associations for the mistakes made. And here's the thing that turned a bad week into a genuine crisis. The apology didn't work. The anger didn't die when the plan did, because by then, the argument had stopped being about a business proposal and started being about the man himself. On Monday, the 3 confederations that had rejected the plan, UEFA, CONCACAF, and the AFC, went a giant step further. They published what they called an open letter to the football family, co-signed by their presidents, including UEFA's Alexander Seferin and CONCACAF's Victor Montagliani. And it is one of the most brutal documents you will ever read, aimed at a sitting sports executive, precisely because it is so controlled. It never names Infantino once. It doesn't have to. It accuses him of breaking trust through deception. It says leadership in football is a duty of service, not a possession to be held or demanded. It says that when a person places himself above the collective that gave him his authority, that duty has been abandoned. And the line that really lands like a fist, this is not the conduct of a custodian of the game, but of someone who believes the game is answerable to him. Sources briefing reporters were blunt about what the letter really was. It was an invitation, an opportunity for Infantino to read the room, stand up, and walk away with whatever dignity he has left. He did not take it. And this is where the map of world football splits clean down the middle, because the revolt is real, and it is spreading. England's Football Association has withdrawn its support for his re-election. So has Croatia. So has Albania. Norway's federation called outright for him to step down. The players themselves, through their global union FIFPro, called his proposal not just a governance failure, but a profound abuse of presidential power. The Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, said flatly that he no longer has confidence in Infantino. Even inside the United States, the country's own soccer federation lined up against him. And behind closed doors, according to multiple reports, those 3 rebel confederations have started, carefully and quietly, floating the idea of breakaway competitions, their own tournaments, a world where FIFA's World Cup carries on without half the planet's best teams. And the confederations aren't only angry about the plan anymore. They're angry about how Infantino has handled the fallout. When the pressure spiked, he called an emergency leadership meeting, but he held it in Rabat, in Morocco, not at FIFA's own headquarters in Zurich. And when the details came out, the rebels pounced. By FIFA's own account, only one elected official was in the room. No FIFA council members were invited. No member associations. Just the management committee, senior staff on FIFA's own payroll who duly reaffirmed their full support for the boss who signs their paychecks. FIFA called the meeting constructive. The confederations called it exactly the problem. A man surrounding himself with people he employs and holding it up as a mandate. That is the abyss Infantino is standing over. And it all comes to a head in March of 2027 in Morocco at the FIFA Congress, where he is up for re-election to a fourth term. 2 months ago, that vote looked like a coronation. Today, it looks like a fight. There's just one strange, crucial detail keeping him alive. No challenger has actually stepped forward yet. It is a revolt without a candidate, a mob with torches, and no one to crown. And that gap is the only room Infantino has left to breathe. So now let's get to the part that should make you sit up. Because with the walls closing in, look at exactly who has shown up to hold them apart. Follow the favors. That's the whole game here. Follow the favors. Start with Trump, because his is the loudest voice in the room. Ask yourself a simple question, the same one the BBC's own analysts asked out loud. Why now? Trump is a man famous for not backing losers. When Infantino was strong, when his re-election was a formality, Trump said nothing. The support arrived only now with Infantino weaker and more cornered than he has ever been. Reports even suggest Infantino spent days trying and failing to reach Trump by phone, feeling isolated as the bad headlines piled up before the president finally posted his defense. And he reportedly reached for others in the administration too. A call was said to be lined up with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, only for the State Department to publicly wave it away, insisting there were no plans to talk and no call happening at all. Picture that for a second. The president of FIFA, the most powerful man in world sport a few weeks ago, working the phones of a foreign government and getting brushed off in public. This wasn't spontaneous cheerleading from Trump. This was a cornered man calling in his markers. And when the defense finally came, it looked a lot like a debt being paid. And oh, what a set of favors there is to repay. In December of last year, Infantino handed Donald Trump the inaugural FIFA Peace Prize, making a sitting U.S. president the very first recipient of a shiny new award invented by the man now begging for his help. During the World Cup, when USMNT striker Folarin Balogun was sent off against Belgium, Trump personally called Infantino and asked him to review the red card. FIFA rescinded it before the round of 16, though Infantino insisted for the record that Trump had not influenced the decision. When the final came, Trump sat beside Infantino, and it was Trump who walked out and handed the trophy to the champions, Spain. And underneath it all sits that Kushner connection, the investment fund tied to the president's own extended family, positioned to profit from the very sale that started this fire. A favor for a favor. That's the pattern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Now widen the lens, because Trump isn't alone. Look at the national federations that broke ranks to defend him, and notice what they have in common. Argentina, the finalists. The team that rode all the way to the championship match this summer before losing to Spain, the country of Messi. The country that got one of the great World Cup runs out of this tournament. Argentina's Football Association didn't just offer lukewarm support. It wrote Infantino a heartfelt letter praising a decade of his leadership, crediting him with what it called a profound transformation of FIFA, and urging him, almost begging him, to carry on into another term. Then Mexico, co-host of the tournament. And to understand why that matters, understand the size of what this summer just handed the host nations. This was the biggest World Cup in history, full stop. 48 teams, 104 matches, 16 host cities spread across 3 countries, and it smashed records for both attendance and television audience along the way. For the hosts, that meant a summer-long economic engine humming at full throttle, packed stadiums, sold-out hotels, restaurants, and transit running hot, and tourist dollars flooding across the country by the billion. Mexico and the United States didn't just throw a party, they cashed an enormous check. And when the man who presided over that windfall came under fire, Mexico's federation did something remarkable. It broke ranks with its own confederation. CONCACAF, the body Mexico belongs to, is one of the three leading the charge against Infantino. And Mexico looked at that and said, no thanks, we're with the president. It threw its weight behind him anyway. Add in Africa's Confederation, CAF, which backed him unanimously, and South America's CONMEBOL, which insisted no one should be pushed out without a full vote of all 211 members, and you start to see the shape of Infantino's survival coalition. It is, to a striking degree, a coalition of the grateful, which brings us to the sharpest contradiction of the entire saga, and it's happening inside one country, the United States. Because the President of the United States is out here calling it a terrible mistake to remove Infantino. But U.S. Soccer, the actual governing body of the sport in America, the organization that ran the World Cup on the ground, stood shoulder to shoulder with Canada Soccer and the Caribbean and Central American unions and called for meaningful change, real reform, stronger governance, transparency, and accountability. It was the strongest statement U.S. Soccer has ever made about Infantino, and it pointed directly at the exit. Sit with that. The American Federation and the American president are on opposite sides of this fight. And that tells you this was never really a national position at all. It was a personal one. Trump isn't defending Infantino on behalf of American soccer. American soccer is trying to reform him. Trump is defending a friend. Now let's take this seriously for a second and give the other side its fair hearing, because a story like this deserves better than a one-way beating. The pro-Infantino camp is not making the argument that they owe him. They would never say that. Their stated case is actually an institutional one, and it isn't stupid. You do not, they argue, remove a democratically elected president of a global body through open letters, media leaks, and pressure campaigns. You remove him, if you remove him, through the ballot, at Congress, with all 211 members voting. CONMEBOL made exactly that point. Reject any attempt to oust him that skips the proper process. Mexico echoed it, saying it would not recognize any procedure convened outside that framework. And there is a real principle buried in there. Mob justice, even righteous mob justice, is still not due process. FIFA, for its part, apologized for the mistakes, insisted the failures were about process and communication, rather than any breach of its rules, and accused its critics of a concerted and ongoing effort to undermine the president and force him out without a proper vote. FIFA didn't stop there. It argued that legitimate scrutiny is one thing, but that it is not a license to distort facts or amplify unproven claims. That Infantino has given more than 30 years of his life to the game and broadened access and resources across world football, and that disagreement with change cannot justify tearing down a democratically elected president. Strip the name out of it, and it reads like the statement any institution under siege would put out. Some of it is even fair. You can also argue that the confederations leading this revolt, Europe above all, with the richest leagues and the deepest pockets, are not exactly neutral guardians of the game when their own power is on the line. That is the fair version. Hold on to it. But here's what it can't wash away. The favors are documented. The timing is conspicuous. And however you dress up the institutional language, this entire crisis was born from one simple fact. The president of FIFA tried to sell off a piece of the World Cup, the single thing FIFA exists to protect, to a private fund with family ties to the man now defending him. The gratitude of the finalists and the co-hosts and the president with the shiny new Peace Prize does not change what lit the match. It just tells you who benefits from the fire never quite being put out. And don't wave off that breakaway talk as an idle threat. Because of everyone involved, the rebels hold the cards that matter. UEFA controls the richest football on the planet. The Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, the Bundesliga, and the Champions League. If Europe, North America, and Asia genuinely decided to stage their own competitions, FIFA's World Cup could overnight become a tournament missing most of the best players alive. That is the nuclear option sitting on the table, and nobody sane wants to press the button. But remember, 2 months ago, nobody thought all 55 European nations would vote to boycott the World Cup either. And then, in a single afternoon, they did. So where does this actually go? Nobody knows yet, and anyone who tells you they do is guessing. A revolt without a candidate is survivable. Infantino can wait it out, lean on his coalition of the grateful,